Don't stare at the screen until your pulse stops. Up close, celebrities don't look alive so much as carefully displayed. Their skin is porcelain stretched over a hollow void. That 5-second delay before they smile isn't a bad connection. It's the demon wearing their face like a cheap costume. It isn't a video glitch. It's a leak from dark rituals. The story people tell about Nicki Minaj is simple. She changed. One moment she was a fire breather, calling the orange man a danger to the blood and bone of immigrant families. The next, she was standing under the burning hum of lights that shouldn't exist, praising him, her face stretched into a mask of pure, unadulterated MAGA energy. Most people argued about the politics. They are blind. I stopped listening to her voice and started watching the way her skin pulled back from her teeth like wet plastic. I recognized that look immediately. I used to stand outside closed doors for a living, listening to the sound of souls being peeled away. In my world, humiliation isn't the end of a career. It's the mandatory opening act of a ritual to feed things that live in the static. By the time this story is over, you'll understand why Nicki Minaj agreed to be seen like that. Because once you agree to be gutted in front of the whole world, they no longer need to decide whether you're allowed to exist. They own the space where your heartbeat used to be. You become a ghost that still has to pay taxes. So, I won't start with titles. I'll start with the fatigue, the kind that feels like graveyard dirt in your veins. It's the exhaustion you earn after years of being the person who makes sure the monsters don't trip over their own capes. I work in press, coordinating the invisible parts of the machine, badges, schedules, making sure the important people don't bleed in public. If I do my job right, I'm furniture. If I do it wrong, I'm a memory. That's how you know you're trusted. I grew up with Nicki in my headphones. It wasn't just music. It was a survival manual for the damned. She was the armor we wore. When my mother saw her on TV, she'd say, "We made it." Like Nicki's success was a psychic shield for every woman who ever had to keep her back straight in a room full of predators. I defended her in the dark corners of the internet. I lost friends over it. I told myself representation was worth the price of your sanity. Then the assignment came. It arrived like a death warrant. Late, brief, and surgically cold. A Trump-adjacent event with press overflow. I didn't ask why. You don't ask why when the paycheck is large enough to buy a new identity. I was told where to stand, what badge to clip to my chest, and who to fear. Yellow stripe access. Secondary. The kind of badge that lets you walk through walls because the guards have already been told you aren't actually there. The first thing I noticed was the air in the room. It felt thick, like someone had replaced the oxygen with cold, gray smoke. The wristbands didn't match the lists. People were drifting through security like shadows in a dream. Nicki's name was being whispered everywhere, but it sounded like a funeral chant. I checked my tablet. I gripped the ID tag hanging from my neck. I tried to melt into the shadows and disappear, but my stomach was turning into a knot of snakes because I realized no one was actually giving me orders. I was just there, a witness to a crime against nature. A man approached me near the edge of the room. He was mid-level, dressed in a suit that looked like it was woven from spider webs. He didn't blink, not once. He spoke like we were already halfway through a conversation about how to hide a body. "Timelines are tight," he said, staring through my skull at the wall behind me. "She understands the importance of the debt." I nodded because if you don't nod, they might notice you still have a soul. "Family stability matters," he added, his voice sounding like dry bone scraping on stone. He never said immigration. He never said blackmail. He didn't have to. He thanked me for being steady before I'd even said a word. That's when I knew. In this room, disagreement was a physical impossibility. Power doesn't want your help. It wants your silence to be absolute. I saw her later. She was moving through the backstage corridors like she was being piloted by remote control. Every step was a calculation. She looked smaller, contained, like someone had vacuum sealed her spirit to save on space. I didn't say hi. You don't talk to a sacrifice before the fire starts. But when she sat down in a temporary room, no mirrors, neutral chairs, the kind of room where ghosts go to forget they ever had names. I was told to wait by the door. The silence was heavy. It had a physical weight. "Some names only stay quiet if I stay loud," she said to the empty air. Her voice was flat, like a dial tone from a disconnected phone. She wasn't talking to me. She was rehearsing her own surrender to the void. This keeps things still. She never asked for help. When she stood up, she smoothed her clothes with a precision that made my skin crawl. It was ceremonial. She wasn't getting ready for a speech. She was getting ready for a burial. As she walked toward the stage, I realized why I was there. I wasn't press coordination. I was a steady presence. I was there to be the normal person who looks at something insane and pretends it's fine. If the furniture doesn't scream, then the ritual must be working. The lights flared. The crowd roared like a hungry animal that hadn't been fed in a century. And before the words even left her mouth, that smile arrived. Too early, too calm, too perfect. That's when I knew it wasn't a change of heart. It was a payment on a loan she couldn't afford to default on. The man in the shadow suit reappeared. He smelled like ozone and old pennies. "Steadiness matters," he whispered. He talked about visibility complicating older stories. He talked about pulling threads. He was talking about her past, her family, her life, all the things they could burn down with a single spark. He wasn't gauging my reaction. He was measuring my complicity. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, a useful, forgettable tool in a shed full of blood. I looked at my reflection in a dark TV screen. I looked exactly like I was supposed to, capable and empty. Nearby, the applause swelled, testing the room's capacity for lies. I wanted to run, but running is a loud act. Staying is silent. I realized then that force is for amateurs. The real pros just make you agree to your own disappearance. When Nicki finally finished, she stepped off the stage and the mask didn't just fall, it vanished. She wasn't tired. She was emptied, like a jug that had been poured out and left to dry in the sun. No one thanked her. No one congratulated her. They just handed her a water bottle and guided her toward the exit like a piece of equipment being put back in its crate. This wasn't a win. It was a completed transaction. I caught her eye for 1 second as she reached the car. It wasn't fear I saw. It was disgust. She looked at me and saw the witness to her humiliation. She saw the steady person who watched her soul get traded for stability. Then the door closed. No sound. Just a void where a person used to be. I stood there for a long time. The room was being reset. Chairs were being folded. The event was being erased as if it never happened. And then I saw him, Donald Trump. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't performing. He was just standing there, watching the room with the eyes of a man who had just finished a very boring, very successful paperwork filing in hell. He looked at me. He smiled a small, satisfied curve of the lips. It wasn't about her. It was about the system. It was about knowing that everyone has a price, and if they don't, they have a fear that's just as good as cash. I went back to work. That's the part that keeps me awake. I didn't quit. I fixed a badge. I answered a question about a taxi. I became the stillness I saw in her. I learned how to stand without shifting my weight. I learned how to be a witness who forgets. People are still online arguing about her political shift. They think it's about red versus blue. It's not. It's about the fact that once they have you in a room with no mirrors, the only thing that matters is how much of yourself you're willing to leave on the floor to keep the lights on. Humiliation isn't a tragedy in this industry. It's an insurance policy. I won't talk about this again, not because I'm scared of a man in a suit, but because I've already learned the posture of the silent. I've learned that the most dangerous thing you can be is steady. If this story made your heart skip a beat, let me know you're still in there. Like the video. Leave a comment if you've seen the early smile on someone else. Subscribe, because the next story starts where the truth ends. Would you like me to tell you about the things they hide in the no-mirror rooms of the Grammys next? Leave a mark in the comments to prove you're still real, and subscribe before the system makes you forget you ever heard this. Tap the like button to signal you're still breathing, while you still have the choice of on the streets. This was a soft kill.